Wan had never really considered herself the type of person to fall deeply in love with someone. But when she met Taehyung 4 years ago, everything changed. He was magnetic, with his deep laugh, warm eyes, and a heart that always found time to care for others. No matter how small the gesture, at first it was just admiration. Respect for the way he moved through life with ease. But then admiration morphed into something deeper, something uncontrollable. Love, a one sided love that had quietly eaten at her for 4 long years. She tried everything, subtle hints, gentle nudges, and even outright admissions that had been masked as jokes in moments of vulnerability. But nothing worked. Taehyung remained Taehyung, always kind and always affectionate, but never hers. And yet, Ryan persisted, hoping that one day he might see her the way she saw him. It wasn't easy to love someone who didn't love you back, but she'd learned to navigate it. To convince herself that her patience would eventually be rewarded. Every time he looked at her with those soft, caring eyes, she wondered if maybe today would be the day he realized what he was missing. But every time those eyes remained the same, friendly, warm, but never more than that. The realization came slowly, but when it hit, it was devastating. It was a sunny afternoon, one of those perfect spring days that held a sense of renewal and hope in the air. Van had been sitting at the campus cafe working on her assignments. When she saw Taehyung stroll in with a girl she had never seen before. There was something about the way he looked at her, the way his hand lingered near hers, and as they walked side by side, laughing at something only they understood. Vian's heart clenched. Taehyung always laughed easily, but this was different. His eyes crinkled at the corners. His laugh was louder, and the way he leaned into this girl, as if pulled by an invisible thread, was too telling. Van didn't even realize she was gripping her coffee cup so tightly until she heard the soft crack of the lid under her fingers. Taehyung waved at her from across the cafe, his smile bright and genuine as always. She waved back. Forcing herself to smile even though her heart felt like it was breaking in slow motion. The girl beside him glanced over, noticing Vian, and smiled too. It wasn't malicious or territorial, it was friendly, even innocent. That made it worse. They approached her table, and Vian's pulse quickened with each and every step they took. She could feel the weight of the 4 years she had spent hoping and waiting pressing down on her like a heavy cloud. Vian, hey, this is Yuki, Taehyung said, introducing the girl beside him. Yuki, even her name sounded lovely. Hi, nice to meet you, Vian replied, her voice steady despite the emotional whirlwind inside her. Yuki extended a hand and Vian shook it, noting how soft and delicate it was. Everything about this girl seemed perfect, her long shiny hair, her bright eyes, and the way she carried herself with effortless grace. So, how do you guys know each other? Vian asked, her voice calm as if she wasn't dying inside. We met at this art exhibit a few weeks ago, Taehyung said, smiling at Yuki. We've been hanging out a lot since then. She's an artist. Not much of one, Yuki interjected, blushing slightly. I just enjoy painting on the side. You're being modest, Taehyung teased, nudging her gently. Wan watched the interaction closely, her stomach twisting. The way he looked at Yuki was unmistakable. It was the way she had always dreamed he would look at her. And in that moment, it hit her. He had never looked at her that way, not once, not in 4 years. They exchanged pleasantries for a few more minutes before Taehyung and Yuki left to get their coffee. Wan stayed at the table, staring down at her hands. She felt numb. The weight of the truth was settling over her. And there was no escaping it this time. He was falling for someone else, someone new, someone who wasn't her, and no amount of hoping or waiting would change that. Van spent the next few days in a daze trying to come into terms with the reality of the situation. Taehyung had never seen her as anything more than a friend, and it was time when she stopped waiting for something that was never going to happen. But the hardest part was that she couldn't hate Yuki. There was nothing to hate. She was kind, talented, and it was clear that Taehyung was genuinely happy with her. And as much as it hurt Ryan, couldn't deny that he deserved that happiness. She found herself at the park one evening watching the sunset, her thoughts swirling like the colors in the sky. She had always imagined that one day she and Taehyung would be watching a sunset like this together, holding hands, laughing about something silly, but that fantasy was just that, a fantasy. She pulled her knees to her chest, resting her chin on them as the sun dipped lower. She couldn't remember the last time she had cried over Taehyung, but now the tears came freely. She had spent so much time waiting for something that was never going to happen, and now she was left with nothing but the pain of unreciprocated love. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Taehyung. Wan stared at the message for a long moment before typing her response. Wan felt a bitter laugh bubble up in her throat. She typed back a message, sure, and put her phone away. She couldn't do this anymore. The waiting, the hoping, the pretending. She had to let go. For her own sake. The next few days were hard. Seeing Taehyung and Yuki together was a constant reminder of what she had lost. Even though she had never really had it in the first place. But with time, Ryan started to realize something. Loving someone didn't mean they were obliged to love you back. It wasn't about winning someone's affection or waiting for them to change their mind. It was about giving without expecting anything in return. And sometimes the kindest thing you do for yourself was to let go. One day, while walking through the campus, she saw them again, Taehyung and Yuki laughing and holding hands. This time, instead of the sharp sting of jealousy and heartbreak, she felt something different, acceptance. It wasn't easy, but it was a step forward. Vian smiled to herself. She still loved Taehyung, and maybe a part of her always would, but it was time to move on, time to focus on herself, her own happiness, and her own life. The next time she saw him, Taehyung gave her a big hug, as he always did. But for the first time in 4 years, there was no longing behind the words, just the truth of their friendship. And that was enough. As they talked, Wan realized something important. Loving Taehyung had taught her a lot about herself. about patience, resilience, and the ability to care for someone deeply, even if that love was never returned in the way she wanted. She had grown through the pain, and now she was ready for whatever came next. The lesson wasn't about getting the person you wanted, but about learning to love and value yourself enough to let go when it was time. And for Ryan, it was time. She walked away from that conversation lighter than she had felt in years, the sun warming her face as she stepped into a new chapter of her life. One where she wasn't waiting for anyone to complete her because she was already whole. Years later, Ryan just came out of the shower after a long day at work. All she wanted was to sleep. It had been years since she lost contact with everyone, including Taehyung. As she was about to turn off the lamp, her phone buzzed with a message. She frowned, picking up her phone. A message from an unknown number.